Hello, friends. Welcome aboard the Round Trip Stories podcast, where we share stories of moving around the world and back again, reflecting on the lessons we've learned along the way. My name is Tracy.
And my name is Melissa, and we are excited to welcome you back to our podcast and to give you a sneak peek at our interview itinerary for fall 2024, so you can get excited with us. We have a special series prepared for you and can't wait to tell you about it. So buckle your seatbelts and make sure your tray tables and seats are in their upright positions as this Season 3 preview episode gets ready for takeoff.
So we are beginning Season 3 of the Round Trip Stories podcast. Hi, Melissa.
Hello, Tracy.
Good to see you again.
I know. It's fun to be recording again. And welcome back, listeners, wherever in the world you are. We're so grateful, as always, to have you traveling the world and the stories with us. It's such a gift to know that you are out there with us. And as we get ready to start up a new season, we have something really special planned. We are going to be sharing a series of interviews with guests who are all TCKs. Now, you may or may not know what in the world a TCK even is. So I'm going to give you a definition that is from the book Misunderstood: The Impact of Growing Up Overseas in the 21st Century by Tanya Crossman. And she says in the introduction, third culture kids is a term created by Ruth Hill Useem during research she did with her husband in the 1960s. And here she quotes her saying, the term third culture kids, or TCKs, was coined to refer to the children who accompany their parents into another society, she writes. In other words, TCKs spend part of childhood in a country of which they are not citizens. Third culture describes the experience of cross-cultural living they share. She goes on to say that third culture kids are not the only people who live cross-culturally, but theirs is a unique experience. TCKs live in a country they know can never be home, with the understanding that they will leave one day. It is this sense of never being at home that makes the experience of a TCK different to the experiences of many other people who live internationally. So TCKs are a subset of cross-cultural kids, so kids who are adopted or kids who are part of immigrant families, but they are unique in that they are living or spend part of their lifetime living in a country that they don't have a passport for, that they likely cannot live in permanently, and so that changes their experience. I did not grow up as a TCK, but I married a TCK and then later became the parent of TCKs when we took our kids to Peru. And the stories that we get to share with you this season are really, really special.
Right. And so all of our interviewees will be TCKs, third culture kids. And Melissa, I am not a third culture kid either. I am married to a cross-cultural person. He's an immigrant, but not a TCK. But when I read this book, Third Culture Kids Growing Up Among Worlds by David Pollock and Ruth Van Rieken, there were some characteristics. I'm like, oh, this sounds like my husband. But one of the reasons we wanted to share was because third culture kids have a very unique skill set, worldview, and definitely unique stories because these all come from their childhood and teen years of growing up not in their passport country. And this can include kids who are military families, international business families, foreign service, even international educators, and then missionary kids. So my first introduction to the term third culture kids was when I was in China and I had my small children with me. I remember I was on my fifth floor apartment, and one of the wonderful woman leaders from my international church was over visiting me. And she's like, oh, well, you have third culture kids. And I thought, oh, maybe it's because I'm in a bicultural marriage, and they're the third culture. And she's like, no, it's when you are raising your kids, or those kids are being raised in the culture that is not from their dad or their mom. They're a third culture. And so reading that book was super interesting. And of course, just like any human being, there are gifts, and then there are also some challenges that can come with being a human, and then also growing up among worlds, as the Pollock and Van Rieken book says, as a third culture kid. Oh, and I'm a parent of third culture kids too, because my kids spent 8 years growing up in China. And so as we've listened to these interviews, we're also as mothers, as parents, listening to these third culture kids, whether they be in their 40s or their 20s, and listening to them reflect on their time. And there's even one question about what do you wish your parents would have known as you were going through all the adjustments. So Melissa and I have been taking copious notes because we also want to grow as parents and helping our kids be the best version of themselves they can be as they are realizing they're third culture kids and why they might be different in a more monocultural, even multicultural society. But there's just a little bit of difference.
And we really are grateful to share these interviews with our listeners because we believe that it will be helpful for people who are third culture kids themselves and are still exploring their identity and their experience and reflecting on it, and also for their loved ones to also better understand the experience of the third culture kids or adult third culture kids so they can maybe understand them a little bit better.
Yes, and that's a whole nother category, right? TCK is third culture kid, but then we have adult third culture kids, ATCKs. And our podcast is called Round Trip Stories because we talk about where we've been and now transitioning back. And these third culture kids have had a pretty decent amount of time to think about that. And so there is some of that, hey, how was your transition back? But there's also some different questions that we're asking this series of guests.
Yes.
So we're just looking forward, we're looking forward to introducing you to our guests, and they just have amazing stories. And so we're just going to give you a little bit of a preview to each of our guests so you know what's coming up for this season.
It's kind of like a teaser to whet your appetite.
All right, so our first guest is actually a TCK expert, Tanya Crossman, and Melissa just read a quote from her book, Misunderstood. So she did an interview with us, and we're so grateful for that. She's worked over 20 years with and researching issues related to TCKs to support international organizations, schools, churches, and families. She's originally from Australia, and she's a TCK herself, having spent her teen years in the United States. She talks a bit about her time as a TCK in transition, and we spent a good chunk of time discussing her research and writings.
She had so much amazing insight to share. I'm so excited we get to share an interview with her. Our next TCK guest interview is with Shireen Joseph. She is a writer and storyteller born in Chennai, India, but from the ages of 5 to 17, she lived in the Sultanate of Oman with her mother and her father, who was a businessman and worked there. Shireen moved back to India at the age of 17 for her university studies, and later married and moved to the U.S. with her young family. Although she has always felt a bit like an oddball, never quite fitting in anywhere, she describes herself as one that can always adapt to the culture around her. And she has really great stories and wisdom to share with us.
Oh, yes, she does. Then we're going to hear from Sam Fisher, a third culture kid who grew up in Indonesia as a missionary kid to an American dad and local Indonesian mom. He returned to the U.S. for small stints and then for college. And now he's a bookseller and dad of 4 in his 40s. And he talks about how he understands that citizenship in God's family is deeper than our culture.
Our next TCK interview that we will share is with Shukura Babiriye, a British citizen of Ugandan descent, who grew up for most of her youth in the United States and Singapore in the international schools where her mom was a teacher. She also spent a semester in Ecuador. And as an adult, she has had to sift through her identities and what it meant in each country, and now even as an adult. She has come to realize that her home is her people, wherever in the world that they may be.
Then we will have Maya Talabard, who is a French third culture kid who grew up in Korea and China with her family as they were relocated by her father's multinational employer. She values her experience in international schools and exploring Asia with her family. And transitioning back to a new life in France proved to be another cultural adjustment. She has an openness that she knows has come from being a TCK, which has inspired her to study again in Korea during university.
Our final guest interview this fall will be with Justin Lau, a Chinese Singaporean raised in Japan who attended international American schools and a British university. With long-term roots in Japan because of his parents' work there in missions, he was especially challenged when he had to go back to Singapore for mandatory military service. Now he is a resident of the UK, and he recognizes that he is a cultural mishmash of everything, and he is proud of that.
Well, I am so thankful for all of the people who have agreed to share their stories on our podcast, and we think that you are going to enjoy them and be inspired by them as well.
We can't wait to kick off this season with you and are so glad that you are on this journey on the Round Trip Stories podcast with us.
We hope that you're looking forward to this Season 3 itinerary we have planned for you. Knowing what is ahead and planning our sojourns is always a part of the excitement. Melissa and I have been touched by our TCK guests' deep reflection on their own global experiences, identities, and settling in to who they are now and how to use their gifts they have been given to share with their world. We can't wait for you to hear these TCK stories too. Come back next time for our first interview with third culture kid expert Tanya Crossman, who has worked over 20 years with TCKs and researching issues related to TCKs to support international organizations, schools, churches, and families. And she is a TCK herself.
Want the podcast equivalent of early boarding and first class seating? Be sure to subscribe to the Round Trip Stories podcast in your favorite podcast app and sign up for our email list at roundtripstories.com so you'll never miss an episode. We believe that sharing stories helps our understanding of the world grow larger while the distance between us grows smaller. Thanks so much for listening, friends. We'll see you next time.
We're taking dubious notes when we do our interviews.
I'm not sure if dubious. I don't think dubious is the word that you want, because doesn't dubious mean...
Oh, like doubtful? Oh, what's the word?
We're taking...
Meticulous notes.
Okay.
Meticulous notes? Okay. Something like that.
Copious.
Oh,
That's the word that you were looking for.
Okay. Thank you for checking me on my adjective.